All right, here we are back again at Hustler Casino. Today we are once again going to go over my 5100 private game. I am going to have to cover a few things, but instead of saying it now, I'm going to save it till the end. And that's in regards to my appearance on the $1 Million game that's currently ongoing as we speak, and also a few World Series of Poker Vegas things. Enough blabbering for now. Let's head into the casino and play some fun hands of poker. Let's go. All right, guys, here we go. Back at it, playing some 5100 at Hustler Casino. This first interesting hand, Ling Lin opens up the action to $300. There's two callers, and I look down at 9-7 offsuit in the big blind. Now, in case you missed my last video covering this private game I host, I like to give action. 9-7 offsuit, probably a little too wide, but I want to get things going right off the bat. Set the pace for a gambly game, and if that means I have to be a victim, so be it. So I make it $2,000 to go. Only she makes the call, but the other two players fold. So all things considered, not too bad. We go heads up to a flop of ace-10-5, two spades, and a club. Now I'm going to pretend I've got something because probably not going to win it with 9 high. So I continue with $1,400 going into the middle. She's undeterred and makes the call. So looking for a good turn card to continue barreling, and it's kind of what we get. It's the 4 of clubs. This time, we could just check and try to take it away on the river if she checks back, or continue applying pressure, try to get her to fold hands like king, queen, king, jack, sort of these Broadway hands that might continue on the flop, maybe even bottom pair, like perhaps a hand like 6-5 suited. So yeah, I think there's still merit to betting. That's what I do. 6,000 into the middle this time. She thinks for quite a bit and makes the call. So that's not what we were looking for. Probably going to have to give up at this point until the jack of clubs comes on the river. Now, why am I acting like that's a good card to continue bluffing on? I have no idea, but I have a club and I have 9 high. She probably can't have a flush given how the hand played out. I mean, maybe sometimes, but more often than not, she's going to have hands like just a naked ace. I just feel like a hand like 2 pair or better would have raised at some point. So unless she's going for a backdoor flush draw, I don't think she's too strong. All that in mind, she's got around 15,000 behind. I decide to apply max pressure. I rip it in there, and she snap calls. That's a terrible start to the day, and sure enough, she turns over 6-5 of clubs. Now, of course, I'll be the first to say I punted unnecessarily in this hand, but that being said, a little bit of run bad, because she could have had a ton of hands that I think would have folded at this point. 6-5 of clubs, not one of them. We're going to be giving her around $25,000 to start the day. Good thing is about punting like that is when you finally get a hand, you should expect some light calls, and that is why looking down at pocket aces is exactly what we needed for the next hand. I make it 300 to go, and once again, she is the only caller, so we're going to go heads up out of position once more to queen 8-3 rainbow. I bet $300, she makes the call. Turn card is the 4 of diamonds. Just like last hand, I'm going to continue betting. This time I've actually got it, though. I put in $2,000 and overbet, trying to get looked up by a queen or perhaps even a curious 8. She, once again, is not done with it, makes the call. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Of course, she could be trapping with some better hands, but for the most part, I think we're still ahead. So when the river comes to 6 of diamonds, despite the fact that it's not the best card for me, she could have rivered some stuff. I do decide to continue betting simply because my image is so terrible that I expect her to call with a worse hand. If she does have a hand like, for example, king-queen, queen-jack, really any queen, and like I said, perhaps even a non-believing smaller pair. So I put in $4,800, a little bit thin, especially without a diamond in my hand. Unfortunately, she raises to $16,000 at this point, and I just fold right away. Sure, she could be bluffing, I guess, sometimes, but I think more often than not, she's just going to have me beat, and one pair is not good enough. So, punt in the first hand, run bad in the second hand, I think, unless, we got outplayed, which is certainly possible. We got some work to do. In the third hand, Rampage Poker, the man himself, opens up the action to $300. There's two callers, and I look down at pocket eights in the big blind. Could go either way here between re-raising or just calling, but considering that he opened from early position, I decided to keep it chill and make the call. We go to a flop of 7-5 deuce rainbow. I do something a little bit unorthodox here and lead out. Good board for all the hands I could have, and I think Ethan's going to check often, considering that it's four ways. So, again, not something you should do every time, but I do put in $400. Ethan makes the call, as does Ling Ling. So, three ways to a turn card, which is the Queen of Clubs. An overcard to my pair. Probably can't continue to get value from worse hands, so I decided to exercise some pot control and check it. This time, Ethan puts in a bet of $1,000. Ling Ling folds and it's back to me. Already it's a little bit dicey, but he only bet half pot and he could be bluffing with hands like ace-4 suited, ace-3 suited, maybe even hands like ace-deuce suited. You guys know Ethan. He's a creative bluffer. Of course, could still be beat, and considering that he bet into two opponents on this turn card, he's probably not too weak. So, yeah, it's a close spot, but I do decide to call and see what happens on the river, which is the 7 of clubs. Looks like an okay card to me. I check it. He checks back right away, feeling okay about it, but then he turns over king, queen of hearts, so that's not going to cut it. We lose the third hand in a row. Let's see if we can turn things around in this next one, where Krish opens up the action to $300. I'm in middle position with queen, deuce of diamonds. Not really strong enough to call, but I do like to give this particular player some action, as many others at the table, so I decide to raise it up with my queen, deuce of diamonds. $1,100 to go, and only he makes the call. What do you know? We finally get lucky today. Queen, jack, deuce, rainbow. We flop top and bottom pair in a pretty disguised situation, I should say. He checks. I bet $1,400. I have two pair. He makes the call, and we see the 7 of clubs on the turn. That's a great turn card. Shouldn't change anything at all. This time when he checks, guess what? I'm going to continue betting because I have two pairs, as mentioned. It's not rocket science. I put in $6,000. Hoping that he's got something to continue with, and it seems like he does because after some thought, he makes the call. So finally, we have a big pot brewing with a very strong hand. River is not great. It's the 10 of spades. So that means ace king gets there. And I'm not saying that because I necessarily expect him to have that hand, but now he could fold hands more comfortably like a single pair because, he might think I have ace king. But what do I know? Because he decides to lead out for $20,000. That's not exactly what I expected. Now, of course, one thing I should mention is that even though he can't really have ace king, I don't think he could certainly have hands like jack 10 suited or queen 10 for better two pair. He might even have a hand like king 9 of clubs, certain hands that do improve on the river. So I don't raise. I just make the call with my two pair. And we end up winning against ace-jack offsuit with the ace of clubs. So kind of an interesting middle pair turned bluff on the end there. Luckily, I have a hand that can call down, and we win a nearly $60,000 pot. Things going back in the right direction, it seems. Next, I look down at king, queen, make it $300 to go. Nate Hill calls on the button, and we see a call in the small blind from Nick Vertucci as well. So three ways to a flop. It's king, 6-4 rainbow. I've got top pair, checks to me. I bet $300. Nate calls on the button, and Nick comes along as well. So considering that I got called by both players, when the river's the jack of spades, I decide to pot control a little bit. Nick checks, I check it. Nate Hill does not check behind. Instead, he bets $1,300. Now Nick makes the fold and it's back to me. And already it's not a great spot because, yeah, I've got a really strong top pair, but I don't know what hands Nate would be playing this way that I am ahead of. I mean, he could be bluffing with like 7-5 suited. I mean, I guess that's probably one of the only bluffs I can think of. But yeah, I've got top pair. I'm not going to fold just yet. I make the call and we see the 5 of spades on the river. I check it again. And now if he does have a hand like 7-5 suited, I suspect he might be tempted to check back now that he's rivered a pair, some showdown value. He does not, though. Instead, Nate puts in $3,000. Kind of a close spot, I'm not going to lie. A little bit player dependent. I haven't seen Nate Hill get two out of line on this particular day. Now, he's more than capable of bluffing. I'll be the first to admit that. But for whatever reason, in this exact hand, I just got the feeling that we were beat. Yeah, I feel like a lot of hands worse than mine would have been happy to check back, like, 7-6 suited, for example. So yeah, I decided to make a pretty tight fold, and later on he told me that I was beat. Of course, he might have just been doing the nice thing where he tells me what I want to hear. Either way, nice hand, Mr. Hill. We lose this one. Moving right along, this brings us to the hand of the night. Krish opens to 400. I'm on the button with ace king. I make it 1400 to go. Now it gets to Rampage in the big blind, who squeezes it up to $5,000. Action gets back around to Krish. He decides 5,000 is within his budget. He makes the call. Now it's on me with ace king, and you guys have seen Ethan's work. He is very happy to make some pre-flop aggressive raises with not amazing hands. So I think ace king is still strong enough to continue getting some value. It'd be great to get Ethan out of the pot and hopefully Krish heads up. So I make it $16,400 to go. Good hand to do this with. I think we have removal to aces, kings, and ace king, the good stuff. But Rampage, it seems, was not getting out of line because he makes the call for 16K. Now it's back around to Krish. He's put in 400, then he put in 5,000. What's he going to do? Well, he doesn't call this time. Instead, he jams all in for $50,000. The old, whatever, screw it, I'm all in, back raise. We've all seen it. He's in there, 50,000 in the pot. I make the call. Considering how he's played his hand so far, I think we're either ahead or flipping. And against a player like Krish, I'm more than happy with that situation. The only concern is that Rampage is left to act behind me. But since he only called my $16,000 instead of raised, I feel like he probably doesn't have me beat. I mean, sure, he could be trapping sometimes with aces or kings, but not often enough that I'm too worried about it until he decides he's also all in for 90,000. So I've already put in 50K. It's 40K additional for me to call. Kind of a weird hand at this point, but what am I going to do, right? 40K into a pot that's now some absurd amount. So I make the call indeed. And it's the worst news I could have heard. Rampage has pocket aces and Krish has pocket jacks. So, we do need a jack to make a straight with ace king, and we do need an ace to make top pair. This is a bad situation. These guys have pretty much all my outs. So we're looking for trip kings probably to try to win this one. We all decide to run it twice, which I guess I'm fine with. Either way, it doesn't really make a difference. What do you know? The first board, we flop 3 of a kind. 2 kings on the flop. Absolute insanity. On the second board, both of these other guys make a set. There's an ace and a jack. So yeah, probably the most ridiculous runouts that you could have expected for these 3 hands. Long story short, the pot is nearly $250,000, and I end up chopping it up with Rampage. Krish gets felted. We split his 50K, each profiting around 25,000 in the hand. Needless to say, I ran extremely hot in this hand. I'll take it. With that, we are out of the hole. We move along to this next one where Vertucci opens to 300, and I call in the small blind with King 10 of diamonds. Flop top pair on King Queen 4. Flush draw out there. I check it to him. Surprisingly, he checks it back. Board like this is pretty good for him, so I didn't expect that. Turning card is the deuce of diamonds, and I think at this point I make a mistake in the hand by leading out. I think checking is probably better with a hand like exactly what I have. But anyway, I put in a bet of $500, and interestingly enough, he now raises it up to $1,500. An extra $1,000 to go. Already not great, because if he had any hands that are bluffing, I suspect he would have just bet the flop himself. So seems pretty strong. But I make the call, and we see the jack of hearts on the river. I check it again. He now bets $3,000, and I think at this point it's apparent that I don't have the best hand. But that being said, I have top pair, and I have a 10. This has some removal to straights and 2 pair combinations, also top set. So I feel like he's probably got something like ace king or pocket aces. That's about the only hands that I could expect to check raise, bluff, and hope to fold. So for that reason, I think it's a little bit too out of line to check raise with my exact hand, despite its properties, like I just mentioned, making it less likely he's got 2 pair and a straight. But as mentioned at the start of the hands, I like to give action in opportunities that seem not extremely terrible. Well, this one is probably debatable as to whether it is or not, but I do decide to check raise all in. Like I said, trying to get him to fold a better king or pocket aces. That's not what he's got, because he snap calls and turns over pocket fours for the old flopped bottom set, and I unnecessarily give away 10,000 in this hand. Yeah, not playing my best poker today, but you know, at least you guys are coming along for the story. Hope it's entertaining at the bare minimum. And with that, we move to the last hand of the night. In this one, Mike X opens up the action to 300. I am on the button with ace king once more. Good enough to raise, I think, so I make it 1100 to go. And Mike X makes the call, so we're going to go heads up to a flop of queen 7 6 2 clubs. He checks, and with a hand like mine on a board like this, I think we could go either way between betting or checking back. Kind of a terrible board to go too crazy on, but this time I do decide to c-bet. I put in $1,000. Mike X makes the call. Turn card is finally a good one. It's the ace of spades, giving me top pair, top kicker. It's time to continue betting once he checks to me, and I am finally not bluffing. This time I put in a bet the size of the pot, $4,500. He's got around 20,000 behind, so I'm trying to set up a nice juicy bet on the river, but I won't get the chance because after some thought, Mike X now check raises to $14,000. Yeah, I haven't played my best poker today whatsoever. I'll be the first to admit that, but it's also been a little bit frustrating, this run of cards. I feel like I'm getting just a touch unlucky, although maybe I can't complain at all after flopping trip kings against aces earlier. So I guess I'll just get back to this hand and stop whining. What hands could he be doing this with that I am ahead of? Well, combo draws, you know, hands like 7x of clubs, you know, flop bottom pair with a flush draw, maybe the nut flush draw, like a hand like ace 8 of clubs, although I think that's very unlikely. I suspect he would just call with a hand like that since he's got top pair, probably doesn't want to bluff with it. Maybe 8-9 suited for a straight draw, 5-4 suited, same thing. These are hands that I beat. Now, of course, there are plenty of hands I don't beat, like a flopped set, a turned 2 pair. That's about it, I guess. So yeah, it's kind of a tough spot. Now, I did bet the size of the pot and still got check raised. That seems pretty strong to me. So I decided to just go with my gut, which was telling me that I was probably beat, or at least most likely. And yeah, err on the side of discipline in this hand, not something I've been doing all day. So I reluctantly fold. And luckily for me, Mike X is nice enough to show ace queen of diamonds for a turned 2 pair. Usually a great situation when you have top pair with ace king against ace queen. Not in this case though, because there's a queen out there. That means I lose. Luckily though, we don't put in more money, which I was very close to doing, and lose what I think is close to the minimum in this hand. Nice hand, Mike X. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings an end to today's interesting hands, but stay tuned for a couple of announcements before you go. Okay, so we just finished playing my private game. This rich man back here is giving them like $6 billion in cash to play his $1 million game tomorrow, which, by the way, I said I would touch on. So the long story short is I had someone who was going to buy a lot of my action to play the game. They canceled, so I was back to either playing it on my own dime or not playing it at all. And at the moment, that game is a little bit big for my current budget, so I decided to pass on it and try to remain on the side of responsibility. Not sure if that's a good decision, especially after this guy probably wins like $2 million tomorrow. I'll be regretting it. By the time you guys see this, you'll already know how he did, so hopefully good. But yeah, back to today's events. We played around 7 hours or so, and I have no idea whether I won or lost. Those are my chips right here. After I do some accounting, I'm gonna figure it out, but as always, you guys will see right here the results. Hopefully they're good, but I think I either won or lost a little bit relative to the size of the game. So that's something I'm okay with. It was a fun lineup, a lot of action. This man and I played nearly a $250,000 pot, so that'll probably be something to use in the title. But yeah, that's it for today. Oh, also, before I forget, we're probably going to be having 25-50 games, cash games during the World Series of Poker on Sundays, 2 p.m. at Resorts World, simply just to skip all the lines. So yeah, 25-50 during the series, Resorts World Las Vegas, we're going to be having a game. But yeah, that's it for today. As always, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for the support. Wish this guy luck, if that makes any sense, considering the timing of this video being released. I hope he wins. That's all I got to say.
All right, as always, good luck at the tables. See y'all next time.